By popular demand, we're going to dive deeper into the top 100 update. We have some big risers to talk about. We talked a lot about the newcomers, answered questions on the mailbag episode last time around, but got some big time climbers to talk about, and we want to kind of walk through each of those. Also some headlines, promotions, all that good stuff to catch up on. Cade Povich's debut as well. I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. Jack, you're going to steer us on this ship a little bit because we got a lot of names on the risers as well, but of course we want to talk about Povich's debut. Friend of the program, one of my favorite interviews that we had last season because he was really having it come together, and then just hearing his journey as a guy that used to be a soft throwing lefty to now see his stuff tick up but still have that pitchability, and his whole development and his whole path has been really unique. So to see him get up to the big league level was really awesome. And then of course promotions are always going to be fun to talk about, and then of course the top 100 list is always going to be fun to talk about. So we got some great topics today.
We got some great stuff. We're going to start with Povich, but as I tilted my camera down to give me less headroom, I realized that I'm showing like this. I'm trying to point to it. Yeah, with my right thumb there. Remember the YouTube comment? Like, does Jack have a ring light in his room? You remember what I'm talking about?
You mean a ring doorbell?
A ring doorbell. Yeah, a ring doorbell in his room. That's an air purifier that just happens to look like a ring doorbell. So I wanted to address that right away.
Yeah.
Get that out of the way. And now we can jump back into Cade Povich.
Yeah, that was important.
Yeah, really important. I love that we are like sneaky becoming the, I guess, B tier Orioles prospect podcast, because B tier is as good as like 29 other organizations A tier when it comes to Baltimore. I just think A tier is like Holliday and Basayo and Mayo, and Mayo is A tier, but we've had Mayo on now twice, McDermott and Povich in the last year and a half or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. We got to get Bradfield, we got to get Kerstad, Norby. Joey Ortiz still has to count. Let's go get Ortiz.
Yeah, he was there long enough. We could still count him.
Yeah, we got to start just attacking the mid-level Orioles, because we know that they are high level in any other organization. And I mean, you just said sneaky all-star love for Joey Ortiz on the Just Baseball show.
He's been awesome, man. And it's just, again, it's a testament to the fact that like the sneaky, like next year, like you said, are guys that could be playing on other teams. We said it last year. Remember, we walked through all of the teams that Joey Ortiz could start at shortstop for. And I know he's playing third, but the point being that he could start in the infield for last season, like right away. And it wasn't hyperbole at all. And now we're seeing him start in the infield for one of the better teams in the National League right now. So I think it's a reminder of just how much talent this Baltimore Orioles organization has, and what they're going to potentially be able to part with and do there. But Povich, we were kind of waiting. We're wondering, who's going to get the first crack. Povich looked like it was easily going to be him in the early part of the year. He did struggle for a couple starts, and then McDermott got hot, but it seemed to line up both matchup-wise and timing-wise. And a lot of times it's beyond who looks better and whatever. It's how it times up with the rotation. You know that as well as anybody. You see it in real time all the time in Indianapolis with guys going up from there to go pitch for Pittsburgh. But it is a little bit about timing and all that good stuff. But I think also you can make the case that Povich is the most ready and was the most deserving and got that opportunity to make his big league debut.
I think so. Like, we talk about ceiling versus floor, and you just think about major league debut outcome. The floor was higher for Povich. The ceiling is lower for Povich than McDermott. McDermott could have gone out and 5 innings, a 1-hit ball with 10 Ks. But he could have also walked 4 in the first inning, and they turn it into a bullpen game, and he throws 2/3 of an inning. You knew Povich that wasn't going to happen, right? And Povich, he wasn't going to give you the 5 shutout innings, and he went 5 1/3, 5 hits, 6 earned. He walked 4, which was really interesting to see. But that's a guy that, clearly just kind of lacked confidence in his major league debut. And listen, you can't fault the guy for that. Everybody lacks a little bit of confidence in their major league debut unless they're built like a different beast. And Cade, all in all, he got him into the 6th, and that's what Baltimore needed on that day in Toronto. And Povich has his major league debut under his belt. I know he, was hoping that it went better, but at the end of the day, man, it makes a ton of sense that they did go with Povich because of that lack of volatility that comes with Povich in a good way.
Yeah, and I think it could have looked a little bit better if he doesn't go out for that 6th inning, and that was kind of where the final 2 runs come across, and the line looks a little bit worse too. And he threw 100 pitches. So I was actually a little bit surprised. And I think to your point, that's why he went there. And he was the guy that got the nod. Is it seemed more important for them to get those innings. And they tried to squeeze one more out of him. And he wasn't his best. And as you mentioned, I think it was a little bit of nibbling and things like that. But I thought we saw some flashes, especially through, the first 2 innings where he looked like he was confident and comfortable. And then I think the second time through the lineup, guys started to get acclimated. And as they started to spin on some borderline pitches and maybe had some, swings where they were a little bit more on his stuff, it seemed like at that point he started to not trust it as much. And that happens so often. We were talking about on the Just Baseball show, like Orioles fans can think about Grayson Rodriguez. And he admittedly was nibbling. He talked about that on the Just Baseball show with us in the offseason. And that's crazy because we're talking about a guy with several plus pitches and who's, made guys swing and miss with the best of them in the minor leagues, feeling like he might have to nibble a little bit at the big league level. So, you can imagine that is just a mental hurdle that so many players have to go through. And if you're, a little bit more of a pitchability guy like Povich and if kind of succeeded off of some built-in deception as well, it can be hard to trust that at the big league level. But I thought he had some good stretches there. And, I wouldn't be too concerned about one bad start here to his big league debut. And he still was able, as you mentioned, to give them 5 1/3. And I think that was the most important part in that first outing.
And sometimes that's all you need when you are one of the best teams in baseball, especially one of the best teams in the American League. I know that you've got that 2-horse race at the top right now, but like on June 6th, you're really not thinking about the division race at this point. It's like, hey, bullpen's tired. Let's go get a guy that can save them 5 innings. And that's what he did. Before we move on to other notable promotions, my favorite wrinkle in Cade Povich is not that he was part of the Jorge Lopez deal. It was that he was a Savannah Banana. Pre-Banana Ball. Yeah, he was not a Banana Ball player. It was when the Savannah Bananas were just a college summer league team that were like doing some quirky stuff in the between innings promotions. But
I do remember that actually.
Yeah. 2024 starts with Nebraska, shuts down. The Savannah Bananas did play summer of 2020, and Povich was awesome with the Savannah Bananas in the, I don't even remember what collegiate summer league team that was, but 26 in the third, 34 punch outs, and ERA at 2.05. So he might be on the Savannah Bananas Wall of Fame pre-Banana Ball.
I think him and Gary Mattis. And Gary
Mattis was the Savannah Banana.
He was the Savannah Banana as well, a legend over there as well. They'll retire both those jerseys, I think.
I think so. I don't know what the jersey retirement will look like. I'm sure they're going to light something on fire and do
and dance around. Yeah.
And film it. I'm sure some sort of, what is it? Bonnaroo Burning Man, Burning Man type festival. I think
I'll tell you what, no matter what, whether you intentionally look for it or not, you'll see it.
I'm sure. All right. Notable promotions here. Greg Jones, I want to talk about getting the call to the big leagues. Ben Joyce getting the call to the big leagues, Nick Dunn with Cincinnati getting the call to the big leagues, and Nick Yorke going from double to triple. He wins the race to Worcester, even though he was in Portland last year. Let's start with Greg Jones, Colorado Rockies. He was blocked in the Tampa organization, and he got the call to join the big club in Colorado. It's fun. He's dynamic, and you talked to him on way back on Locked On MLB Prospects.
Way back, but nice guy and obviously extremely talented physically. Was banged up a little bit this year, so it was pretty wild. I mean, the most unique part about this promotion and why not, right? I mean, we're talking about a guy with elite speed who hits the living crap out of the ball from an exit velocity standpoint. So throw him up there and see what happens. But I thought it was pretty wild that he was hurt. He out for a month, 3 rehab games, 3 games back in AAA, and they bring him right up to the show. So he's getting up there with very little momentum, almost the opposite. And he had been swinging it pretty well. He had been hot before the injury, which is what stinks. And I think, which is also part of the reason why, I think they decided to do it. But I think it's wild. I don't know if I can remember the last time that a prospect gets hurt, is out for a month, 3 rehab games, 3 regular games in AAA, and then boom, let's get you to the big leagues. But, I'm excited for him. And again, the Rockies with where they're at, just bring guys up and throw them in the fold and see how it goes. And I mean, he can run, he can hit the ball hard. We'll see how the rest of the game goes. And now he's kind of made that transition to the outfield for the most part. But he could be a unique super utility guy if he hits enough. And he doesn't have to hit that much with his speed and power and the ability to play the outfield and shortstop and, the other infield spots. Like, he could be a dynamic super utility guy if he can hit enough.
So first professional plate appearance still needs to be had at the time that we're talking, but he did appear in a major league game. I'm not sure if he was a pinch runner or a defensive replacement.
I was watching. He just came in as a defensive replacement in right field, like at the end of the game.
That's what I was going to say. In right field, in total Rockies faction, they put him in right field. This guy is a shortstop center fielder, and I went to the database, starting with his time at UNC Wilmington in 2018. And this guy has played right field for a grand total of 6 games last year in Durham. He's been a shortstop and center fielder his entire life, and then he just hops in right field in his first major league inning. It's the Rockies. That's why we love them. That's why they're our favorite team. But, man, I mean, the Greg Jones experience is it's going to be fun. He's going to slap the gear on at some point this year. I feel good about that.
It's just so on brand. By the way, Joe Rock is like shoving in AAA for the Rays, which is also interesting always. But I'm glad that Jones got this opportunity because you mentioned like blocked in Tampa. Now gets a chance to play at the big league level, and that's awesome.
And he's good enough to be that super dynamic guy, and everybody could use a shortstop center fielder on the bench. That's why I think, a guy like Ji-Hwan Bae has value because he can plug in at short if need be. For the most part, he's second and center. But if you have a middle guy where it's a middle infielder, center field hybrid, that guy has a job in the big leagues more often than not. Next guy that I want to talk about is Blake Dunn with the Cincinnati Reds. And Blake Dunn is a guy, speaking of outfielders, that had, I think, one of the best years in all of minor league baseball last year. I don't have the numbers in front of me. It was like 950 OPS. Stolen base total was over 50. Home run total was just shy of 30. This was, middle round pick out of Western Michigan. I think a 4-year guy, maybe even a 5-year guy in the MAC. And he had a breakout year, if I'm not mistaken, between high A and double in 23. He was okay in AAA so far this year, but they're making the move to a guy, that really earned the opportunity to put himself in position for a call-up in 2023.
Yeah, it was one of the best years in the minor leagues last year from the speed and power perspective. He hit 312 as well. And a lot of the underlying stuff, like, backed it up. You could say, older guy, against younger competition, blah, blah, blah. Dunn was a guy that had plenty of prospect intrigue, but just continued to get hurt in college, unfortunately. And I think that was part of the problem with him, and that's why he got a later start. He could have been a prospect, I think a draft prospect in 2020 as well, kind of one of those casualties from the shortened draft. So yeah, I feel like with a Blake Dunn this year, it seems like he's been hurt. And because I think people see him struggling in AAA, and I don't think it's the AAA competition that is really making him struggle, more so just his physical, just where he's at right now. And he's a guy that's just unfortunately had a litany of injuries throughout his professional and amateur career, but was able to stay more healthy last year. The EVs were down. He just didn't look quite as explosive, but I think it's been coming back to him, over the last handful of games. But when you look at what he did last year, I absolutely think he's earned the opportunity. And the Reds are hot all of a sudden. Dunn's a guy that can, at the very least, demolish lefties. So you have a speedy guy that can play good defense in all 3 spots and crush lefties. It's always a value to that. I do think that he can help them this year as a 4th outfielder if he's healthy. And I really do believe that there was something else going on there, not just him, not really being able to perform at AAA. And I think if they put him in positions here where he can predominantly face lefties, I think he helps them a ton, because this Reds team has a lot of guys that don't hit lefties well, and he's the perfect player to spell that, assuming he can kind of pick up a little bit of where he was last year. And I think he started to do that of late.
The thing that jumps out to me about Blake Dunn before we move on to the next guy, and it's Ben Joyce. Like everybody knows what we're going to talk about with Ben Joyce. Blake Dunn is as high efficiency of a base stealer as we've got in minor league baseball. And not only did he swipe 54 bags last year, he did it in 61 tries. And in his minor league tenure, like in Louisville, he was 9 for 9 in his 44 games with the Bats this year. In his minor league tenure, he's stolen 88 bases. He's been caught 8 times. That's really impressive.
That's really good.
He's 88 for 96. And I know that he's 25. You mentioned this guy has been often hurt. The fact that this guy has been often hurt and is still this high efficient and this prolific of a base stealer is commendable. So he adds another level of dynamicism to a lineup that loves to run. I mean, Cincinnati, in large part because of Ellie De La Cruz, but like Cincinnati wants to get off to the races, and they added another guy that can kind of get them off to the races.
And 100%, and then hit lefties, which they need that too. So I think that fourth outfielder lefty platoon role, like that's valuable for a young team there, and hopefully he gets some run.
Next guy is Ben Joyce, and on the Just Baseball show, you said this is the best version of Ben Joyce that we've seen in pro ball.
Yeah, 100%. In the fastball, like just looks better. He's actually throwing it harder on average, which always helps too. But beyond that, just the command is so much better. Last year, just really was fighting himself to throw strikes, and now 69% strike rate on his fastball this year. The other side is that the slider was just kind of non-existent for him at points, and he just really couldn't rely on it. Now he's throwing it a little bit slower, but with more movement. It's a tick less, but with much more movement to it, which I think is helping him, because I think it would just kind of flatten out on him last year. So he's been getting a 22% whiff rate on that slider as opposed to a 13% whiff rate last year. So he's been able to up that usage from 22% to 31% and not rely on the heater quite as much. And the heater quality being better from a velocity and shape and command perspective. This is the Ben Joyce that, I think people were saying, oh, okay, they'll fast track him to the bullpen. He'll be that guy. I think injuries also were disrupting him a little bit command wise and just also pitch quality wise. But I think we're seeing now, like, this is the guy that could get fast tracked to the bullpen and help them. Unfortunately, there's just not much importance for a fast tracked reliever right now in Anaheim. But that said, like, this is the guy that we saw in college, and this is a guy that I think can be a really successful minor or big league reliever in high leverage, because I mean that fastball is insane from such a low release as well, and getting on guys with good extension. Like, it seems like he kind of got back into the lab this past year during the offseason and focused on how he could get himself back to where he was at Tennessee and kind of back to the dominating, overpowering guy that throws enough strikes. And I think as long as he's healthy, this is the version of Ben Joyce that's going to stay.
Dude, so yeah, I mean, another reason why Jurickson Profar should be starting in the All-Star game. I know he flied out to right, but he flied out to right on a pitch at 103.3. Like, I don't understand how a guy like Profar, who's on the other side of 30, is catching up to 103.3. But I mean, credit to Jurickson Profar, and dude, like, if this guy's pumping 103.3, I don't care where it is, as long as it's somewhere close to the strike zone, and it's going to work. And if a guy throws 103, they should be in the major leagues.
Yeah. And the fact that the slider is now there, so he's not a one-trick pony, is huge. And getting an extra inch of horizontal and just a little bit of a different angle there. Yeah, I'm buying it. I just hope he can stay available for them.
What do you think the velocity threshold is for it to be okay to be a one-trick pony? Like 101, I don't think you can be a one-trick pony. 103, I think you can be a one-trick pony.
I mean, yeah, I think it's like 103. It's crazy because or just absurd characteristics on top of that. But usually the harder you throw it, the more it starts to flatten out. So yeah, I think if you want to go fastball only, it's got to be like 100 with incredible characteristics. Like, we've even seen Mason Miller over the last couple outings come down to earth a little bit as hitters like gear up and are able to clip it. Like, it's, if you're throwing fastballs and they know it's coming, like Shohei Ohtani knew that Paul Skeens fastball was coming and finally was able to time it up. Like, guys will eventually time it up. And if you're a high leverage reliever, it doesn't matter that you got 2 whiffs before the third pitch. If you give up a home run, you blew the save. So like, as a starter, it'll even out and you'll be okay. The solo shot doesn't hurt as much. And the 2 out of 3 whiffs will usually end up being a positive. But as a high leverage reliever, you can't get clipped once. No. And that's the problem with the super heavy fastball reliance.
100%. Last promotion that I want to talk about. We just talked about 4 big league call-ups at this point with Povich, with Greg Jones, Ben Joyce, Blake Dunn. Nick Yorke got the call to AAA Worcester. And it was interesting because he was underperforming with Portland. I wonder why he was the first guy. He's played a lot of games in AA at this point. Nick Yorke, I've got it pulled up here. in his double-A career, he's already played 155 games, but he was OPSing at under 700, a 691 OPS. He was hitting 250, but only slugging 366. He was punching out a good deal too. It's interesting to see Yorke get this call to AAA, to be honest.
I think it's more of because to your point, like it was surprising. I think it's more of like an organizational depth chart situation because Christian Campbell has been performing for them, and Campbell, was putting up great numbers in high A through the first 40 games, had a 976 OPS. So they brought him up to double, and he's going to mostly be playing, up the middle there. And obviously he's not going to be playing much shortstop with Marcelo Meyer there. So he's predominantly playing second base. I think that's part of it because I think they wanted to get Campbell some consistent reps. And I think at this point they were saying, hey, for what you said with how many games that Yorke has played. All right, let's just get you to AAA and see how it looks there. And at this point, I don't think the competition matters as much. It's just, is Yorke going to be as good as he can possibly be and kind of battle against himself in terms of, is he going to tinker with his swing every week or is he going to find the moves that work for him? We know that he's got power. We know that he's produced in the past. And at this point, I think it's more of, can he find what works for him? I think he's either going to find it or he doesn't, whether he's in AA or AAA. So might as well bring him up to AAA and let Christian Campbell get those reps in AA as he turns 22. So I think that might be the bigger reason because they also have Addison Paulino who needs to get reps. And I think it was starting to get a little bit crowded in that infield.
Got you. All right, we are going to talk top 100 here. Biggest risers and why, biggest fallers and why. Sort of kind of rapid fire. I'm just going to pose the name, and you're going to tell me why they were risers, and when we get to the fallers, why they were falling. But before that, all right, let's start with the number one prospect in baseball at this point. James Wood of the Washington Nationals got the bump. He was already well inside the top 10. I think he was a top 5 prospect in all of baseball, but he got the bump to 1. It's really hard to move up when you're in the top 10, but this guy climbed several spots to number 1. He's hitting 355 in AAA. He's not punching. He's walking. He's hitting homers. I mean, I don't think there's too much to describe here, but why is James Wood, Aram Layton, the new number 1 prospect in baseball?
You mentioned the numbers and then a mechanical adjustment to back that. And I'm working on a piece right now kind of diving into some of those mechanical adjustments. Rare instance where I actually think adding a bigger leg kick actually helped him because before, I get it, big guy trying to simplify the moves. So he was just kind of short stride forward and go. But that short stride forward and go resulted in him just kind of only going forward because he didn't have that negative move in his load or that counter load or counterweight going the other way. So it was kind of just step forward and push. And so I think that was causing him to, kind of swing over breaking balls and result in more of a steep path. And if you look at, and again, I'm going to dive into it more in an in-depth piece and we'll make a video out of it too. But if you look at where his hands were at foot strike, it's kind of leaning downwards. Hands were kind of jacked up. Whereas now he really has this still rhythmic and timed up leg kick, but it allows him to get into his backside and he's working more behind the baseball. And I think we've seen across the board the results. I mean, we're talking about a contact rate that's up significantly, both in the zone and overall. We're talking about exit velocities that are up. He's a 90th percentile of 110. We're talking about the ability to hit breaking balls and off speed way better than he ever has. And the biggest thing that stood out to me is demolishing stuff on the outer half compared to last year where he kind of struggled with stuff on the outer half. Because again, you think about it, you're going forward, you're just not going to have that same plate coverage and you're not going to be able to have the barrel stay in the zone and be able to elevate stuff on the outer half. So seeing him do that stands out. And of course, I think it's helped him against lefties as well. Like this wasn't just a guy that has had a hot stretch. This is a guy that made mechanical adjustments, is demolishing AAA pitching, and has pretty much satisfied every concern that we may have had there. I think it's extremely difficult to look at James Wood and say, oh, he needs to get better at this or this. The one thing that we were told, right, was like, oh, well, he needs to get better against lefties to get up to the big leagues and get that opportunity. Well, now he has an OPS over 1,000 against lefties. I think people made the case, oh, well, what about Skeens? And, I totally get that. I think Baseball America just made Skeens the number 1 prospect. Yeah. I'm always going to go with the hitter if I think that they have a case there at number 1 and it's neck and neck. And I felt like this was neck and neck. We're talking about a 21-year-old with plus speed who's flashed plus run times down to first base. I probably profiles best in a corner, but can play center field. Like, that's an everyday player at 21 years old that is big league ready right now. I think that's the guy that I'm going to take at number 1. But yeah, just across the board, improvements, and the swing decisions have even gotten better too.
So apparently I glaze Skeens. So
That's
he
what the
is
kids are
not.
saying.
That's
Yeah.
what the kids are saying. That's what they're saying on Twitter. So I quote tweeted the tweet that said, "I glaze Skeens more than anybody," and said, "I'm going to take all of my Skeens love and push it towards Griffin Canning and JP Sears instead."
Hell yeah.
But yeah, even then I'm with you. James Wood has proven to be as close to flawless of a prospect as we've got, especially in the upper minors, which is crazy because I think we saw how freaking good he was, but we saw flaws as recently as last September. And now those flaws are pretty much all but erased at this point, and we're just waiting till he gets to the big leagues to see anything exposed.
Yeah, just last thing, I think that's exactly why he's got to be the top dog. But the last thing I'll mention on that too is against non-fastballs last year, like he wasn't bad, but it was something that was kind of a yellow flag to how is that going to work at the big league level if there's whiff rates like this and some concern here. He had a 27% in-zone whiff rate against non-fastballs and a 17.5% swinging strike rate. On top of that, 758 OPS. And then so far this year against such pitches, he's slashing 323, 422, 616. And his swinging strike rate's 14%. His in-zone whiff rate is less than 17%. So, it's just night and day. And if it was just happening and I didn't see a mechanical adjustment, I'd say maybe it's approach and I could still believe it. But when you see a tangible mechanical change from him, and then you see these dramatic shifts in numbers, I'm going to buy into that every day of the week.
Yeah. We're naturally going to spend more time on the top prospect than all the baseball. But now, we kind of kick into the rapid fire. And another guy in the top 10 now, Minnesota Twins outfield prospect Emmanuel Rodriguez, a big jump to number 10 in Just Baseball's updated top 100. Why is he at 10?
So I'll paint a picture for you, Jack, and then you tell me if this really, I know you've always liked Emmanuel, but if this kind of puts you over the top with him, because similar, we had some questions. Is he going to hit enough? Is he almost too passive? Is he going to stick in center field? Loved the defensive video, just crushing through all of the balls that were hitting the air at him, all these different areas in the outfield, and just seeing how comfortable he was going both ways, going straight back as well. I think he really glides out there more than people give him credit for. So you have a guy that's, I think, maybe even moving better than ever. You have still the same guy in terms of he's drawing walks with the best of them. He's hitting the ball even harder somehow this year. He's hitting lefties better than he's ever hit them. He's really doing everything across the board that we haven't seen. He's stealing bases at a more efficient and more aggressive clip than we've ever seen. And he's even elevating more than we've ever seen. Strikeout rate's lower in Double-A. Is that not everything that you wanted to see from Emmanuel? I know that he's a unique prospect because of the strikeouts and the 3 true outcome approach, but now that he has basically quelled a lot of those concerns and proven that he can play in everyday center field, what's the concern at this point with Emmanuel? If you had one,
I don't know, maybe that he reverts to borderline passive.
Yeah.
That would be the only concern. But at this point, he's not passive. And, I've been sitting here watching George Valera for the last 3 days. I got 3 more days of George Valera. That guy, is passive. That's somebody that, really prides themselves on walks. And there's a reason that Valera, albeit injuries have played a role as well. But that guy is almost too passive to be considered a selective hitter. Rodriguez, I think, is different at this point. And the thing is, Rodriguez is strong as shit. And I think he's making that known. And the numbers are speaking for themselves as a youngin in Double-A. I'm totally with you on this front.
Yeah. And I mean, for his EVs to jump up, and I think people were looking at the strikeout rate and saying, oh, well, if it's 30% in high A, what's it going to be in double? It's lower. So if he's doing that against this competition, I think we're starting to see that this is just going to be the version of him, I think, at each level. I think he's still going to be this guy. It's not going to be one of those things where it's, strikeout rate's higher. It's going to be even higher at the next level. Maybe in the early going of his big league career, but at this point, I think it's very clear that he is who he is, and I think he can duplicate this even against more advanced competition as he just continues to become the best version of himself and kind of the final product of himself. By the way, still just 21 years old.
Yeah, crazy. Another guy, 20-year-old in high A, waiting for the call to double. Number 22 overall, Xavier Isaac of the Tampa Bay Rays. Isaac was a big mover as a first baseman to be a top 25 prospect in baseball. I know he was on a heater of all heaters in May. I think Christian Crespo named him the May Player of the Month. It might have been April. I'm blanking. Like, I feel like the months are just bleeding together at this point. But he has been one of the best performers in minor league baseball to this point. What pushed a first baseman this high for you?
I see a lot of just similarities in terms of the offensive profile to like an Owen Casey. So of course I'm always gonna enjoy that. To me, it's just the athleticism in the box for such a powerful guy. And I know, you and I got to see that in real time up close. But the way that he moves in the batter's box and the way that he's able to get to pitches that not only should most hitters not do damage on, but like get to them and do major damage on is eye-opening, I think. And the approach has just continued to get better. His pitch recognition and ability to hit breaking balls has continued to get better. And he's even stealing bags. I think he's like 8 for 8 in his last like 20 something games. So seeing that aspect of it is a testament to the athleticism that continues to get overlooked with him. His last 25 games, he's slashing 386, 461, 761 with 7 home runs. It's a 1222 OPS and the 8 for 8 bags. But for me, it's just the operation in the box is about as good as I've seen out there. And that's just one of my favorite swings in professional baseball. So I think that on top of the fact that his exit velocities at 20 years old are already in the top, 1% to 2% in minor league baseball. He just hits everything hard and elevates, and it's just tough to beat this guy. So I think the only thing that's really missing is being able to hit left on left. And I think that'll come. But at the end of the day, like if that's the biggest issue with him, I don't think that's much of a problem.
Yeah. There was a rocket ship of an arm that climbed into the top 25 right at number 25. Christian Scott of the New York Mets. And we've talked plenty about Christian Scott this year. Scott has his first couple of major league starts under his belt, and I think they're kind of suspension bridging him where they're limiting his innings here as we get into the summer months, and he'll be back in due time. But Scott, was it a combination of, a little bit of big league success and the punch outs being there and the walks not being there whatsoever in AAA, like just kind of validating what you were feeling coming into this year? Because Scott was on your top 100 before he was on really any other.
Yeah, I mean, and we had him, he wasn't just in there, like we had him, I think probably like 70. Yeah. And then what does he do? And that's before he goes out and dominates in AAA and then goes out and shows that he belongs at the big league level. It's just the fact that we talk about nibbling and all that stuff, exactly who he was in AAA at the big league level. And then sure, there was some things like you could limit the long ball, and that was the one thing that we saw in AAA that had been a bit of an issue for him. But that was really the only thing. I think if you look at the big league stint that you could really poke a hole in is, hey, he got burned on the long ball a little bit. If that's his biggest issue, like there's some really good pitchers in Major League Baseball who still have that as their biggest issue. Throwing strikes, the command of all of his pitches. And I still think like he is getting better and better. Like that feel for the changeup that was there last year is still just like finally coming to him this year. That I think the efficiency, the stuff, the overall command, he's high floor, but with the quality of stuff to still have that high ceiling. I think that the funniest part is you mentioned like he's in there in Syracuse now to limit his innings, and he is. Like it's mostly just to limit the pitch workload. He only threw 59 pitches last time out, but he still turned in 5 innings because he was so damn efficient. 59 pitches, 40 strikes. So that's the thing for me is like his only problem right now is that he's around the zone too much maybe sometimes. I love that from a guy that has a fastball, a slider cutter, and a changeup that he can get you with and all look like good pitches at the big league level.
Well, and guys that are built like that are not supposed to be too around the strike zone. He is a long guy with a whipping delivery. You're not supposed to be able to command everything the way he does, but he does somehow. And, the only way you get an answer to that, the only way you understand the secret sauce is if you talk to him, and it's like, chances are he has no idea either. It's like, I've just had good feel for like where my limbs are.
Yep. It's got to just come natural to a guy like that. I do know he worked hard. Like I went to a place to kind of work on his mechanics and I think it was a couple off seasons ago, and that's where things really clicked for him. But just this is the kind of athleticism and repeatability that you can't really totally teach. It's just you find out that you have it.
Yeah. Clumping 3 guys together here, and they're kind of scattered in the 30 to 70 range. Noah Schultz, Drew Thorpe, Jairo Iriarte. They're sharing a rotation in Birmingham. Schultz and Iriarte for a couple of turns were sharing starts. Like it was Schultz to open, go short, and then Iriarte to follow. So I simply ask, do you have White Sox fever or what?
No, not at all. But but I do love their arms.
The 14-game losing streak doesn't do it for you?
Oh, man, I will say, though, anytime I tune into that White Sox broadcast, I'm galvanized. I'm ready. I'm ready for war.
Tonight's the night.
Tonight's the night they're ending that thing. No, but, I think you can see I just had a great time going on with our guy Elijah, Future Sox, and talking about their system. And there's so much to be excited about there for the future. If you can get away from the mess that is at the big league level and really, focus on what's coming, they've got it made on the pitching side with those three guys, because what I love is the variance in a good way. Like you have so much, you have so many different types here, which is fun because sometimes organizations just stick to one type and develop that type, which I get. But the White Sox have a 6'9" lefty. They have a righty that is funky and Iriarte that creates tough angles and has nasty stuff and some command questions. And then you have like the strike throwing change up and IVB guy and Drew Thorpe. And I think those are all three guys that are like in different spots, like different ends of the spectrum, like totally different archetypes, and they're all succeeding. And I have certain types of players, pitchers that I'll gravitate towards, but I like to put guys in their, buckets, their own pitching prospect archetype, and then look for, what they need to excel in to succeed. And I feel like each of these White Sox pitchers are like excelling in what they need to. Where it's Iriarte, you gotta miss a ton of bats because that the command's going to be fringy. What is he doing? Fastball's blowing by guys with a unique angle and tons of whiff at the top. Slider has been disgusting for him, and he's been getting a ton of chase. For me, it's those command guys need to have a ton of chase. Noah Schultz, it's a little bit different. I think it's more of like just seeing him throw strikes because the stuff's already there. Throw enough strikes. What blows my mind with him is he's not just throwing enough strikes. He's throwing a ton of strikes, 68% strike rate. And for a guy like that, it's, are you able to be more than a one-trick pony and not just be that fastball slider? I guess that would technically be two tricks, but, it's usually just you get lulled into that sequence and it's like, oh, here's another big lefty who has two pitches and, you try to shoehorn him into a rotation. That's not the case with him. He commands the fastball really well. He's got the slider for a strike at a 72% clip, and that pitch is one of the best sliders in minor league baseball, period. And then you have a cutter that he manipulates off of that a lot of White Sox pitchers are starting to throw. And he's even flashed a changeup that the strike percentage has not been there, consistency has not quite been there, but it looks like it can definitely be a viable pitch as well. So the fact that he's already doing that as a 6'9" lefty at 20 years old, I mean, that's insane. And then Thorpe, it's just keep doing what you're doing. Is the fastball going to be good enough? And is he going to throw strikes at a plus rate because he has to, and he's doing that, and then also mixing in other pitches enough, and he's doing that. So all of these guys are doing the things that you want to see them do. And then with Schultz, it's just doing what he did last year again against better competition and being healthy. I don't need to see you stretched out yet. I'm pro take it easy with him. And we talk about it when we get exhausted of guys, having the gloves on and just being kind of babied. I'm cool with that with Schultz for this year. And I think given the parameters that he has, he's done everything you can ask for.
100%. I ask you, I'm going to set like a date, and I want you to go earlier or later. So over under. Drew Thorpe's major league debut comes before or after July 5th?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I don't think he goes to Charlotte. I firmly believe that like they don't send a pitcher to Charlotte. They're going to jump right from Birmingham.
I say before. I don't see a reason for him to throw much more in Double-A. I mean, Thorpe is a walking quality start right now out there.
Right. It's crazy what he's doing.
I mean, the worst he's had, like, I'm not going to count the 2/3 of an inning, and I don't know what happened on the 12th. I don't know if that was like a rain out or what happened there. But if you don't count that, I think his worst start of the year is 6 innings of 2 earned run ball.
Come on. Come on.
He's got to be getting bored out there.
Dude, like last year, and just look at it, like record in ERA for a moment. Last year, he was 14-2 with a 2.52. This year, he's 7-1 with a 1.35. Nobody in high A and double A is supposed to be putting up numbers like that when it's, that old head type of stuff. But like, he goes deep enough to put himself in line for a win. Like, record in the minor leagues never means anything. Record in the major leagues never means anything. But like, when it's 14-2, it's holy crap. And then he's 7-1 again this year. It's wow.
It's really hard to have a winning record in the minor leagues because bullpens just blow it. Like, it's just
horrible.
so many things happen.
And it's like, you don't go 5 often. Like, it's like, hey, you go 4 1/3 and you punch out 11, and that's awesome.
So his last 25 starts, a 1.77 ERA, 147 2/3 innings, 179 punch outs, 35 walks.
Come on. Get him to the big leagues, man.
There's nothing else left to prove.
When they trade Crochet and Lubob, it's going to be Drew Thorpe, the Drew Thorpe show in the major leagues. All right, jumping to 2 guys that have yet to turn 20 in high A. At 41 and 42, they're stacked. Jefferson Rojas of the Cubs, Sebastian Walcott of the Rangers. I think one of those names is better known in prospect circles, especially coming into the year. I think everybody knew that Walcott could be a guy, and he was the one that was the complex darling last year.
Mm-hmm.
Rojas, did he pop up out of nowhere? And like, just those 2, why did you feel comfortable putting 2 19-year-old is a 19-year-old a teenager? Because I think they're technically an adult when they turn 18, but
but you're still, it's 19.
19, yeah. So why did you feel comfortable putting 2 teenagers at 41 and 42?
Well, we loved Rojas coming into the year, and another preseason top 100 guy for us. But he did come out of nowhere a little bit. But that said, like, the reason why I think we had him in here in the preseason list was what he did, in extended, and then what he did in low A as a 18, and he was 17 years old at the start of the season last year. So like that side of it was just remarkable. You look at how advanced he is in all facets, just bat to ball wise. Defensively, I think he's gotten a lot better. The approach is good and starting to hit the ball pretty hard. I know the numbers aren't great from a slugging perspective, but this is a guy that just turned 19 who's in high A, and he's been starting to heat up of late. But we're talking about a 90% or in-zone contact rate above 90%. We're talking about good, again, palatable chase rates and a 90th percentile exit velocity of 103 from a guy who just turned 19 at shortstop in high A. I think it's really impressive, and he elevates consistently. Like, I do think the power is going to come, and when that does happen, he's going to be a really well-rounded shortstop. So I think with Rojas, it's a little bit of you're banking on the projection, but how advanced he is already is really impressive. And then with Sebastian Walcott, I think he's one where people might be looking at the results and saying why is this a guy that we continue to hear and even continue to see climb? This kid is 18. He just turned 18, and he's in high A. I'm looking at an operation in the batter's box that you just don't see often. He's 6'4". He is long, but still is efficient to the ball. It's super adjustable in the box. He has gotten off some of the most impressive swings I've seen this year when he does get them. And at the end of the day, like, he's striking out below 30% of the time as a big, long-levered power hitter in high A. Very aggressive assignment, and I think that's fine. He's going to spend the whole year there. Let him struggle and get better and go through things and all that good stuff. But over his last 20 games, he's got an 834 OPS. We're starting to see it come together for him. And again, he hits the ball so freaking hard. I think as he gets a little bit older and a little bit more mature and a little bit more aware of how his body works in the box, his like explosion is going to be crazy because he can do some things that you just can't teach.
Got you. Another teenager in the top 50, Kevin McGonigle of the Detroit Tigers, 19 years old. He jumped to 49. You text me enough about McGonigle, so you don't need to tell me twice, but I know that you don't text everybody that listens to this podcast. Why do you love what McGonigle has done in low A? And I think last week I was like, let's get this cat to West Michigan. I still firmly believe that. What makes you, I guess, fall in love more and more with McGonigle as the weeks go by?
It's hard to find a much safer offensive profile. I mean, it's one of my favorite swings at the lower levels from the left side and right out of the draft. I mean, this is a guy that, again, we've had on the top 100 list for a little bit now because of how just advanced the bat is and how advanced the approach is. The fact that he's now starting to tap into some more juice too, that I think is being suppressed more in the Florida State League, that will shine through a little bit more. And I think it's going to be average at best. But again, that gap to gap power, even with him, with the feel to hit that he has, with the approach that he has, this is a guy that's walking more than he strikes out. You look at the way he's able to cover every different zone. He's been able, I sent you some videos. I know, like a fastball that was like up and in that looked like it was about to hit him in the face. And not only does he get to it, he somehow hits it, into the outfield and gets it past the infielders. Like there's certain things that it's just, how does he get to that ball? How does he hit that? How does he still drive that pitch while also still running a chase rate below 13%? Like this is just such a sound offensive profile. And we're seeing him to start to hit the ball harder. I think his athleticism is underrated as well. And I think he can play a really good second base. He's still been mixed in at shortstop a little bit, can probably fill in there in a pinch, but it's just such a good offensive profile.
I love it. A couple more guys. I think 3 more. Yeah. Laz Montes of the Mariners, Addison Barger of the Blue Jays, Huston Waldrep of the Braves. Laz Montes at this point sits at 54 on the top 100. And again, another 19-year-old. You've got crazy. But this guy is, spoiler alert, leading all of minor league baseball in runs driven in. Doing that in low A, where he got, week and a half delay on Montes. On AAA. Absolutely insane what Montes has done. Is it the data that convinced you, or is it the sheer production that has convinced you?
It's more, honestly, performance. I think the data, people might be surprised. It's not as like off the charts as you'd imagine. And I think that's more of a testament to the fact that he's just trying to hit right now. And I don't think he's trying to pop 118s, then that's how he kind of had that, virality and a lot of people excited about him. But I think we're seeing a guy that is just looking like a more complete hitter. Another guy that, the mechanical adjustments preceded a improvement in bat to ball and some things that just allowed him to tap into more consistent contact and be able to, make more overall, I think, better swing decisions and just be more comfortable all in all. And I think we saw that with now a lower chase rate. And also just, you watch these games, man, like we talked about it, like he has B swings now, whereas before I felt like it was like A swing or bust. Now we're seeing him, even when he's fooled, still have enough behind it, shoot a ball the other way. Like he looks more hitterish, and that the power is always going to be there. And I think that's going to start to tick back up and come back in. It's not that he's not hitting home runs. He's got 9 in 51 games. The EVs haven't been there as much, but I think that's, again, because he's trying to be more of that complete hitter as he gets more comfortable and continues to see that, hey, I'm this more well-rounded hitter now. I think as he starts to leverage his advantage counts and let it eat a little bit more, we're going to see that power really start to shine through.
Got you. Addison Barger, you want to talk about power shining through. Barger, had a brief sample in Toronto. It was not great, but he has been mashing in Buffalo. Elvis was a little bit of a mover too, but Barger is a guy that was like fringe top 100 coming into the year, and he's firmly inside the top 100 at 55. What makes Addison Barger of the Blue Jays a top 60 prospect?
It's a little bit of everything, from the performance to the underlying data to just watch him swing the bat. Like it's crazy. The amount of bat speed that he can generate and the amount of impact that's there. To me, I see such a high probability big leaguer and an above average one at that, with positional versatility. And it's hard to argue against that. The fact that he also mashes left on left makes me feel like, okay, he can stay in the lineup every day too. Being able to play multiple positions even helps that even further. So I see an everyday player too. But when you see the way that this guy can just pulverize baseballs, the unteachable bat speed, the body control for such a loud move that he repeats so well, I think he's big league ready and he's worthy of an opportunity. Obviously, they have some roster situation there and a lot of infielders and things that they need to figure out. But like what they've been using Kevin Biggio for, I feel like Addison Barger can be a much better version of that and be a guy that can actually be in the lineup every single day. So, I mean, when you have a 90th percentile of 106, you have above average contact rates. I think when you look at the swing decisions, those have continued to get better. And then just watch this guy. I mean, It is rare explosion in the batter's box, and he can get to some ridiculously tough pitches because of how quick he is.
He's a fun watch. He's not a boring watch by any stretch. And, some guys in this top 100 are like borderline boring, and they're really good, but like boring can be really good and boring can be a top 100 prospect. He's a very fun top 100 prospect where it's like, you're swinging for 500 feet. And sometimes it goes a little bit shy of 500 feet, which is really cool. We are going to get to fallers in a moment, but I want to tell you how you can see these guys. We can help you. Go see these guys. New friend of the show is Gametime, which is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. That means minor league baseball as well. If you live in the Indy area, want to get out to Fort Wayne, South Bend, Indy, wherever, Louisville, Dayton, you can go to these games. I mean, you can go get a Hartford Yard Goats ticket on Gametime. It's excellent. That makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. You get killer last-minute deals, all-in pricing, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB and MILB tickets. Use Gametime for last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, for concerts, for comedy, for theater. The list goes on. Panoramic seat views, lowest price. I love the all-in pricing. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code JUSTBASEBALL, all caps, one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code JUSTBASEBALL at checkout for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Before we get to the fallers, I do want to fill you in on the 19 newcomers. I'm just going to run through their names because the risers that we included did not include the newcomers. We have talked about the newcomers before. Read more. It's linked in the episode description, the top 100. But the 19 newcomers working from 100 down all the way to, actually, I think 50 and Brandon Sproat, right? Yeah. 50.
Yeah.
100 to 50. Braylor Guerrero of the Rays, Chase McDermott of the Orioles, Robert Gasser of the Brewers. I hope he's all right. He and DL Hall are going to Elytras, which like stinks for a second opinion. Same time, Gasser and Hall. I feel for the Brewers, man. Max Meyer of the Marlins, Yoelin Cespedes of the Red Sox, Adam Mazur, nice debut for him in Anaheim for the Padres, Zaire Hope of the Dodgers, David Festa of the Twins, Jacob Wilson of Oakland, Spencer Schwellenbach, a couple of big league starts under his belt for Atlanta, Starlene Caba of the Phillies, Thomas White of the Marlins, Aiden Miller of the Phillies. Miller has been balling out. Ralphie Velasquez, same deal with Cleveland Guardians in low A. Tyron Lorenzo of the Dodgers, Felny and Celestin and Johnny Farmello of the Mariners, Leo Dallas DeVries, Leo DeVries, and then Brandon Sproat of the Mets. Those are the 19 newcomers. Thank you very much. I appreciate the golf clap. Let's get to fallers. We start really high. You may not know the name Braylor Guerrero. You know the name Jackson Holliday. And Jackson Holliday fell from 1 to 3. It's a 2-spot fall, but 1 to 3 is legit.
Yeah, I think it's
more a testament.
More a testament to the to Skeens being an alien on the mound and James Wood turning into what our wildest dreams potentially were, and you still got to do it at the big league level, but seeing that. I will say though, the whiff rates, with Jackson Holliday, I think made him a little bit less of that can't miss top 100 guy. And we talked about it, like the benefit of hindsight's always great and helpful. But the thing that I kind of kick myself on a little bit with Holliday is that, we had talked about it before where, it was so hard to argue against the performance and every scout and everybody you talk to saying, oh yeah, that's an easy, plus hit tool, or at the very least plus, and a little bit more than that. But the contact rates were always below that, and I was one of those where I'm like, maybe, we don't need to go so deep into the data. Don't overthink it. Like clearly everybody sees a plus hit tool there. You can see it when you watch him. It looks really smooth and easy. But to be honest, he would have been the only guy in the top 100 list with a plus hit tool below and his own contact rate below 85%. So maybe that was for a reason. That said, like, I still think he can get there. And I think there's going to be some things that he's working through, and he clearly is, and he's been better of late. And I still think he's going to be a really good big leaguer for a really long time, but I just don't think he's maybe as complete and maybe as can't miss as everybody branded him as, because baseball's really hard. And there's a development process that goes into that. And I think just being a kid that was around baseball for so long and just more advanced than his peers at pretty much every single stop, and maybe even in AAA for a lot of the competition that he was facing, I think he was maybe able to get away with a little bit more. And then when he got to the big leagues, some things kind of were exposed. And I still think he's going to be able to figure that out and get right. But again, I think, when you look at upside, Jackson Holliday's upside wasn't what made him alone the number one prospect. It was the floor and the upside. When you look at the upside now of James Wood, it's of course going to be higher than a Jackson Holliday. And now with the floor kind of sinking a little bit with him and Holliday, I think it's really hard to say that Wood wouldn't be a better prospect than him.
Understood. We jump a little bit, deeper down the top 100, I guess, and we go all the way to 45. Brooks Lee, if I'm not mistaken, was in the low to mid 20s at the start of the season. He's now at 45. It's tough because he's been unavailable, and I feel like that's your main concern with the Twins prospect.
Yeah, I the same way that we worry about like pitchers and things like that, and that's why and also just they're not playing every day. That's going to always allow us to defer to the hitters a little bit. I mean, Brooks Lee slipped in the draft because of some back issues and physical concerns, and just seeing those come up again and in the injury concern, that's definitely something that stands out because a big part of what I think makes a player like him is valuable because they grind it out, they're in the lineup every day, and they do all the little things. And I think Brooks Lee can absolutely do that. But I'm a little bit concerned that his availability may hold him back from that, and he's not a guy that's gonna give you as much value if he's only playing 3 or 4 days a week. He's not a guy like Royce Lewis that's going to, when he plays, explode and hit a ton of bombs and steal a ton of bags and make all of the, and play elite defense. And Brooks Lee is going to be a compiler. And, if he's not available to compile, I become a little bit more concerned about that. That said, extremely high floor and a really nice baseball player, but that's what caused him to slip, I think, a little bit.
Got you. 2 spots down, Adael Amador of the Colorado Rockies. You have a fly in your room? You got to get out of New York.
Not anymore.
Oh, did you mark it?
Yeah, I think I put that guy in the dirt.
Good on you, man. Wait till you go to Florida. You got bugs everywhere, right?
Yeah. Not as bad on the east side.
Actually, because the lizards help with the flies, I assume.
Yeah, and we got way too many of those.
Gotcha. All right. Culling. Deer. I know in like some areas you got to cull deer. You got to cull lizards in South Florida. 47, Adael Amador, the Colorado Rockies. And we spent a long time on him when we did our struggling hitters episode, but he's starting to catch fire a little bit, huh?
Last 20 games, 7 homers. He's got a 913 OPS. So things are looking a lot better.
But 7 homers. Like, what?
And I think it's actually 7 homers over his last 15 games. If you shrink it down, he looks like he's starting to settle back in again, which is huge, obviously. But the reason why he falls a little bit is, those struggles go into the end of last year, excuse me, which we attributed to coming back from the hamate. And then now he's had time and still it was really rough. And I think it was just how rough it looked because this is a guy that's going to play second base and has to hit. We talked about that, right? Like, it's not about the power with him, although now he's starting to slug a little bit more, which is nice. But he's a guy that has to be a plus hitter. And, he just was not doing that through the early part of this year and through the end of last year. Being a second baseman who's not going to give you much value elsewhere really got a hit. And there was some concern, when he wasn't doing that and the path looked different. He just looked really uncomfortable and in between at times. But heating up now and could easily be a guy that ends up climbing back up again. But he was one that it was really hard to figure out where to put him because how long I've loved the bat. But when he's not hitting, like, it becomes increasingly worrisome because he doesn't really give you much value anywhere else.
Yeah. I was scrolling. Then I got to Ricky Tiedemann at 75. Tiedemann is the most talented left-handed pitching prospect in baseball, but he's not throwing. And I think that's why he fell as much.
I start to wonder now, like, is he ever going to be available? And I hope so. I doesn't makes me sad to say that, but I mean, it's all the time now. And even like in the beginning of, during spring training, it's a hamstring thing. And then now, it's back to an arm thing again. I think you have to look at the history here and I don't even think they've told us all the times that he's had flare-ups and things like that too. So like, it's just been nonstop for him. And unfortunately with the Blue Jays, like, I don't know if you can blame them for it, but it's been a kind of a theme there. And I know it's a theme everywhere, but you look at some of their top guys, Nate Pearson, Brandon Barrera. I mean, and now you have Tiedemann. So I think there's things that you can do to mitigate it to a degree. At the end of the day, it's and arm injuries are inevitable, but you have to look at the Blue Jays here. Marudis just hit the shelf too. Like, yep. There might be some things that they're not doing to mitigate it as much. I don't know. I don't want to put that on them, but I can only speak to a trend. I think Tiedemann, it might be a little bit of an anatomy thing because it's just been a nonstop thing for him.
Right.
But that becomes increasingly concerning. Like, you got to think about it from this perspective. If you're trading one of your top players, you'd be thrilled to get Ricky Tiedemann back if he's healthy. But if I'm telling you, like, hey man, like, we want these prospects, or you offer me Ricky Tiedemann, I think the 70 other prospects ahead I'm taking, because I don't want to take that risk of Ricky Tiedemann never being available. And that's why he's where he's at in this top 100 list. At the end of the day, man, like, availability is huge. And we're talking about trade value here. And that's what's really baked into these rankings. I can't say that I'm taking Ricky Tiedemann ahead of a lot of the guys, all the guys that are ranked ahead of him because of the injury concern.
I'm 100% with you. I think if I was the lead decision maker for an organization, whether that be a GM or a president of baseball operations, and I was offered Ricky Tiedemann, instead of, holy shit, I'm going to get Ricky Tiedemann, my first thought is, let's see how the physical goes.
Yep.
Which, like, dude, you don't love that at all. And I think that's why he's at 75. Dylan Lesko fell to 82. Lesko, I think, was in the mid to high 50s at the outset of the season. Lesko has really struggled with command. I think opponents are hitting like $160 against him, but for some reason he's walking the world. Is he just shaking off rust? Like, what's going on here?
That's the thing, is I was hoping that he was just shaking off rust and last year. And, that's something that I think we pushed him a little ambitiously, because he adds a breaking ball that he feels really good about. He's a guy with a track record of throwing strikes, made some adjustments to kind of get his mechanics where they needed to be and where he was, as a high schooler, where, he was really lauded as a guy that had clean mechanics and throws a ton of strikes. And then just seeing him struggle with that, is surprising. So I think maybe it was a little bit of an ambitious push going into the year before he actually showed much. But the stuff is just so crazy. We're talking 20 plus inches of IVB. We're talking about one of the better changeups in the minor leagues. And, we've seen that he can spin it to 3,000 RPM, but at the same time, he hasn't been able to locate either of those breaking balls. So, I mean, dude, it's a strike rate on the fastball below 50%. Like that's a disaster at this point, which sucks because he is so talented. In zone whiff rates off the charts, and the changeup whiff rates off the charts. But he's got to throw strikes. So it's really just about that. And hopefully he can find that. But it just seems like he has not been right since the TJ in terms of mechanics and delivery.
Yeah. Two more names: Bubba Chandler of the Pirates, Mick Abel of the Phillies. They're both in the 90s. Bubba Chandler at 92. He's really struggled, man. And I know that he put together a decent start his last time out, but he's almost guarded at this point because he was struggling with command. Then he had forearm issue and a little flare up. He missed a turn and then he came back. And it's just a combination of, you had some serious command issues, over fastball reliance, over reliance on the fastball, I should say. And now you've got the little bit of a flare up. It just feels like it's kind of been a perfect storm to get him to drop a good bit.
I mean, I remember when I saw your face when I told you that he's throwing his fastball 70% of the time. You're like, oh, dude, no way.
Yeah.
What's good for Bubba is that his changeup is good. I don't know why he's not throwing it more. Like, his changeup, he's landed for a strike at a 68% clip, and he's been getting great numbers on it, but he only throws it 10% of the time. And then he has this cutter, slider/cutter that he throws. It's more of a cutter at about 20% of the time. And he's landing it for a strike less than half of the time and getting no whiff on it, even when it is in the zone. So why are we throwing the cutter twice as much as the changeup? And also, why are we throwing the fastball 70%? The fastball is unreal. It's a 70. I think it's a 70 heater. So I get why you throw it 60% of the time, maybe. But that changeup needs to be thrown more. And that gives me some hope. But also it's like, are you sheltering it for a reason? Is that a pitch that maybe doesn't play as well if you're throwing it more? Because remember, this is a fastball. We saw it in real time. It's absurd how fast it gets on you. So maybe that changeup is performing well because no one's really geared up for it. If I get the scouting report on Bubba Chandler, I'm not even worried about anything but the fastball. If he locates 3 changeups or cutters, I'll tip my cap and walk back to the dugout happily. That's fine. I got to be ready for that fastball because I know 7 out of 10 that I'm going to see are going to be that, especially if he's pitching from behind, which he has been doing way too much of this year, 13% walk rate. Can't teach that fastball quality, can't teach that arm speed, and that elevates the floor if I think he can be a high leverage reliever. But this is a guy that, we were excited about as a potential starter, and not having the feel for the cutter and not really having a confidence in anything other than his fastball is a little bit concerning.
100%. Last guy that we got to talk about is Mick Abel, who just stays on at 96. Yeah, he's only 22, but he's in AAA and he's been getting killed. Like, he's not finding the strike zone still, and opponents are barreling him up at this point. Like, he's a head scratcher to me, but frankly, he's just like kind of a source of frustration for me.
Very, very frustrating. I mean, we're talking 5 walks, 4 walks the last 4 starts.
Like, can't do that.
One silver lining. Remember, we were talking about, dude, fastball's down 2 ticks, like what's going on, all that stuff. 2 starts ago, he averaged 94.3, which is getting there. And then last time out, averaged 95. Neither of those starts were good, but at least one thing, let's check one thing off at a time here, right? Like the velocity's coming back. And maybe the confidence will come back there, because this is a guy that already had some command issues. I can't imagine if you already had command issues, you're pitching at the highest level that you've ever pitched at, and your fastball's diminished 2.5. Everything was diminished 2.5 ticks. So I do have a little bit of optimism that maybe that'll get him right, but stuff is down 2.5 ticks across the board, and the command has been as bad as ever. So he stays in because of the youth and the benefit of the doubt, given how talented he is. And I know he's a guy that you've loved for a long time. I loved what I saw in spring training. We saw some mechanical adjustments, and I think maybe he's struggled to repeat those now, and he's caught in between his old mechanics and his new ones and his new release point. And I think he's just kind of lost. He's kind of on an island now. So the velocity's coming back. It's encouraging, and hopefully results are to follow. But otherwise, he's on the edge of falling off the list.
Yeah. We were going to wrap with some minor league stat leader trivia, but you got to go jet sets. We'll just do that at the outset of next week.
Yeah, we'll do it. We can do it as an intro to the Griffin Conan episode on Monday.
Easy.
So, yeah, he got another clip to bug him with. Did you see him eat shit around first?
I did. Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, I know. MILB Central put that one out. So,
but he killed that ball. He killed it.
112 on that one, which is crazy. 10 years after he faced him in high school, faced Tuki Tucson again. Like, that's a pretty wild, one that's been that long already, but 2, like, that's where it's cool with baseball. Like, 2 guys taking it that far already is always a good reminder of how hard it is to keep playing the sport that long. But that was a cool thing to see. But looking forward to talking to him about one other thing that we forgot. We got to ask him about baseball's new knuckleballer as well. He did face him. So
we'll face David Fletcher.
We'll get to ask him about David Fletcher as well. So that should be fun. We got some fun topics on Monday. I think folks will enjoy. That'll do it, though. Have a great weekend. Look out for a James Wood piece next week, breaking down some of those swing adjustments. Very much looking forward to that. And, yeah, that'll do it. Talk to you on Monday.